Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to welcome you to episode 1 of a brand new series here on the GothamChess YouTube channel known as the Steps of Chess, or Chess Steps, or Steps to Getting Better, keyword steps. And in this series, I'm taking you through the entirety of the rating ladder against my very own subscribers, playing them in 5-minute and 5-second bonus games, although 10 and 15-minute is absolutely okay for practice. It would just make for an extremely long video. And in this episode, we're going from ratings 200 to 800. So we're going to play 7 games, and we are going to just see the kinds of mistakes that folks are making, no pun intended, making up the rating ladder. Timestamps are on the video player, and if you have any feedback, do let me know them in the comments below. First opponent is Yoga Dad, who I suppose is a dad who does yoga, which is a shocking thing. Now, in every one of these games, we're going to be focusing on certain concepts, and the very first one that I would like to focus on is the very beginning of the game. Now, you should be putting pawns into the center of the board. If you have the opportunity early on to play 2 pawns into the center without having one of them get captured, that is what you should be going for. If one of them can get captured or is attacked in some way, that is going to be an exception, and we now have 2 pawns in the center. Now, my opponent actually happens to be playing an opening known as the Caro-Kann defense. You don't have to know that if you're at 200, but now we have a situation where one of our pawns is actually being targeted. Now, as long as you're following basic opening philosophy, you can continue with development of your knights before your bishops. That's a general good rule of thumb. Bishops tend to be a little bit more flexible. Knights are generally going to be moving toward the center. But if you have a question asked of one of your pawns, you should solve it. You should either take or push. I would recommend taking early on. It's honestly one of the easiest things to do because now the pawns are sort of frozen. There's not a whole lot that can happen. Now, I said knights before bishops, and generally we're going to be developing the knights, which are helping us on our way to castling. Our king should be moved out of the center. Now, early on in games, you're going to have opportunities to check. This check shouldn't really be happening, and I'm going to play it because I'm 200, right? I'm sort of playing to the level of the opponent. It's okay. It's just, it doesn't really offer you any advantage. It's actually a little bit better to put your bishop out here, better than also putting it back here. It's just a bit passive. Now, you don't need to take. Generally, if you're not really prompted to capture, you shouldn't. You can finish your development in some form. In this case, I'm just going to play short castle. I will only be moving my bishop again if my bishop is attacked. But right now, it can sort of stay still. I still haven't moved my other bishop, and I still haven't moved my knight. So, yeah, like right now, for example, I can develop my knight, I can develop my bishop and pin the knight. That's what we're doing here. Our bishop is pinning the knight to the king, meaning it can't move. We have a lot of moves. We have many, many, many moves. One of the best moves about castling is that you can then put your rook on the open file as well. So let's play knight out to c3. It's a bit better here to pressure the center with the pawn, which we obviously have blocked, and then put the knight behind it, but we don't know that. We're a low-rated player. Bishop g5, so now we have a crisscross applesauce pin. The hardest part about chess, as a 200, an 800, or a 2100, or anything in between, is what to do in the middle game. We've developed our knights and bishops, so now what? General rule of thumb is that if you can continue to slightly improve your position, like bringing your queen out and connecting your rooks, like, right, this is good. Our rook now controls some open space, and for the entirety of this game, we haven't actually been put under any attack, right? That's the main thing right now. If we've been attacked at any point with a bishop, with one of the pawns attacking our bishop or something, we would need to react. But so far, it's just okay, beautiful. Here we have a great example. So my rule of thumb is, even though both things are worth 3 points, bishop and knight, I don't want to give away bishops unnecessarily because bishops are long-range pieces. And the best way to describe this for you is, and to show you why our bishop belongs here and not here, is because you would need to make this trade. So I'm going to retreat. And now we've sort of lost a little bit of time, but the light squared bishop is very useful for targeting the pawn near the enemy king when the opponent castles. And if we can kind of get a little bit of help with a queen, a knight, a rook, right, then we're going to be in good shape. So first thing I always look at, we're not going to be taking that. That's not a fair trade. In chess, there's a moment in the game where you can make forward progress into a position, particularly a knight, which is why you try to develop it into the middle of the board. So a move like knight e5, which you support with the pawn and the rook. You see, these moves now tied together, right? The other thing that this does is we're not looking to make this trade. We're just looking to get a nice centralized outpost for our piece from where we can deliver pressure. And we've opened up the queen. We're not going to go out there, and you see, we're not going to go out there because we're going to get taken, but you see our opponent takes and doesn't anticipate that after pawn takes, we now fork, right? We now fork the bishop and the knight while being protected. So our opponent missed that we put the rook on e1. This is a counting mistake, and now we have won a bishop for a pawn. Now, I mentioned a while ago that I'm putting this bishop kind of out into the middle of the board to pressure on h7. The only thing guarding that is the knight. So if I can get to a situation where I can remove that knight from existing and then play queen takes h7 checkmate, defended by my bishop, that is how we can win this game. That is one path of victory to winning this game. But first, our rook is under attack, right? So queen takes rook is a possibility. And that's very important. You can't just get tunnel vision because then you're going to lose everything. Now, there's two ways to get out of this. Number one, move the piece to safety. Number two is defend the piece. Defend the piece. Something like the bishop, the pawn. I'm going to, for simplicity's sake, just move it back to where it came from. That's generally a good rule of thumb. And now, notice that when the queen moved, this is the hardest part about chess. The queen didn't just attack us. It also unpinned itself. So the knight is now able to move, and the queen will not be lost. Also, if we take the knight, the queen will not be taking. It's going to be the pawn opening up the king. So there's a lot of these constant dynamics going on, right? And besides a slight counting mistake, which led to a loss of material for my opponent, the slight expansion on the queen side was slightly inaccurate. But honestly, the person's playing a fantastic game of chess. For someone rated 200, you think 200, you think blunders galore, right? So... But right now, the game plan for us is still very much to go over here. So remember, I kind of drew this up. So bishop b7 doesn't threaten us. We're gonna play queen to f3, which is actually a very slight, maybe inaccuracy in the sense that we're lining up our queen and this bishop. It's a hard part to see. For many players, like you might get hit with this move. Now, if my opponent plays this move, I'll be very impressed. It's a great move, kind of seeing the opening of the board. The knight is now under attack and the queen is under attack, and that queen defends that bishop. So that's a really nice example of piece coordination. But I will still go here and I will continue kind of my attack. Furthermore, we are actually threatening to... Great move, you see? Fantastic. So a lot of players here will maybe see this and put the knight in the middle. That's another way of moving out. You can play knight to e4, which blocks the attack as long as you're well protected. But I'm going to continue with my plan. Pawn takes knight will lead to that same idea. So if that entire attack is successful, it will show you how kind of middle game planning works. Okay, my opponent has sort of thwarted me, but I'm still going to take the knight. Because upon recapture, this pawn will not be able to protect against this, right? So we have queen takes h6. And now we are threatening mate. The only way to stop this mate is to do something called interpose, which is block the line of sight of one of the pieces. That is a very tough move, but you can come to it if you just sort of take a second and go, well, I don't really have anything else, right? So, queen h7 is the winning idea. The other idea is to give the king an escape route. So kind of remove the rook, if you will. And okay, they do it. Now there is an idea here to go with the bishop instead, and that can lead to hunting the king out of the corner. And while that is probably good and winning, I cannot safely say that that's going to happen. It's probably far more likely that a lower rated player will follow the king. And that's what we're going to do. And we're going to run into a situation here where if you actually check the king to its death, it runs away, right? So let's see. Let's watch this happen in real time. And all of a sudden, you now have two problems. You have a hanging knight and a hanging queen. So now you're like, oh my God, right? I have to rescue my queen, but where do I go? So let's play, you know, queen to g7 or something, right? Or queen to h7 or queen all the way back to h4. And now... pawn takes knight. But okay, opponent sees this. Oh my gosh. Right, I've got people who are in my Discord who are freaking out that I'm making mistakes. that I'm not playing at the level of the opponent. So this is actually really, really nice. I think people are not realizing the point of the series. But that's the beauty of these live recordings. My audience goes nuts. So now, if you take this pawn, you get mated, which is kind of nuts. This queen and bishop battery, and you actually can move the knight into the middle. That's a nice example of blocking, interposing an attack. But you're not just playing defense. You actually have a queen and knight lined up against this pawn. Just don't take it with a knight and get mated. That would be very tragic. Understand that your queen, bishop, and knight are now kind of in a... These three pieces are in a bond here. So queen takes f6. Nice idea here, protected. Let me drink some water. And king's got to go. So the opponent really should go here, because if the opponent goes to the back rank, I can't take the rook, right? Because of the protection there. So I can give this pawn a capture now. And, right? Now the king will have to go to the back rank. But we did make an inaccuracy. We sort of went hunting with our queen, which is not what you should have done there. You should have understood that the checks don't lead to anything. So now we go to the back rank. We still can't move the knight. The best move here is probably to preemptively block this diagonal with like a pawn move, for example, and then move the knight. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring our rook. We have a lot of great moves here. Like really, truly. We can keep checking. We can... But what I am going to do is just bring my rook. And this is just an example of improvement of your position, getting pieces in the game, not getting tunnel vision, pumping the brakes. So this move... remove the defender of the bishop. Right, so our queen now has a choice. And we go queen takes bishop. So now we don't have to worry about this. And the king right now doesn't have a lot of breathing room. So if we get a way to not just attack the king mercilessly with the queen, but maybe bring a rook to the party, right? That pawn is in the way. It's very important that you kind of see the dynamics of the position as the game is unfolding. I imagine rook c8 is going to happen. And then we have, like here, for instance, we have a knight fork, which you're more than welcome to do. In fact, you can also take the rook and then get the knight fork. I'm just going to do the knight fork because it's good tactical awareness. That's another decent idea, I must say, by my opponent, who is combining their pieces extremely well here. But after king to e7, we have a very nice move. The queen is hanging, but you can avoid an attack with an equal or exceeding danger. And the hardest thing to see here is this move, right? So rook takes e6, which actually is mate. The queen protects the rook. The queen, which is under attack, protects the rook. Now, if in this position, you want to play queen check just to get the queen out of the way, absolutely acceptable. But this game was actually, that was a very good game. I mean, we didn't do a whole lot, right? We didn't do a whole lot. Well, the hardest part of this game was when we transferred our knight into the middle of the board. This is like a move that doesn't take much risk and just slowly improves the position. And if the opponent hadn't blundered, maybe we would have, again, gone for that weak square near the king. But overall, honestly, that was a fantastic game by my opponent. And we followed basic opening principles, like putting pawns into the center, understanding and seeing the danger of the threats of the opponent, and coming up with a game plan based completely upon a weakness, right? A target in the opponent's position. And here we made an inaccuracy. Here we should have pumped the brakes. We could have gone hunting like this and tried to get our knight and our rook, but that's a little bit too high level. It's a little bit too high finesse. And we had to not hang mate. It's actually very important. We had to pause for a moment and go, is there a threat to me? And there was absolutely a threat. So next game, we're playing we're not playing a 400. The game automatically aborted. Let me retry. So I'm playing somebody named Ruling Shadows. So again, queen's pawn, with black, we're gonna try to put a pawn into the center of the board. And we have a London. Okay, so this is a London system. We're not going to be able to put a second pawn. So we're just going to develop our knight. And normally the D and C pawns go out together. In this case, we're just going to have to develop our knight at some point. So the best thing to do is to play the C pawn in queen's pawn positions and then the knight. We don't know that because we're 400, so you know, we're just gonna have to play normal moves. We're gonna have to bring our bishop. And by the way, it's probably better to bring out your bishop instead of blocking it in. You see what we've done here in the queen's pawn positions? Queen's pawn positions are slightly different than king's pawn positions. So here's an example of why this check is really bad, by the way. Last game, it turned out not to be terrible, but if you're gonna get blocked by a pawn, it's a bad check. Right, I'm trying to show you the mistakes of the prior game. Okay, so we're gonna have to just come back now, offering this trade. That same knight transfer to the middle, but first let's castle. And this is a very closed position. The last game featured a pawn trade in the opening. This game doesn't feature a pawn trade. So in positions that are closed and you sort of make as many knight and bishop moves as you can, at some point when you have such a closed position, pawns are gonna have to get involved. So, for example, we can both trade each other's bishop, right? So here's an example of why that can be dangerous if you take your opponent first. If you take your opponent first, notice what happens. You have a target here, right? That's very tough to see because they haven't castled yet. If you just lazily, you could lose the game right now. If you just play like this, bishop takes pawn, you're on the verge of getting mated. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna play h6. I'm gonna move that pawn out of the line of sight of these pieces. The board is big, you have to be very careful. Okay, opposite side castling. So we've played, I've played short castle, they've played long castle, right? In a position of 8 pawns, you need to constantly look at pawn breaks. So I'd like to attack in the center and trade, but I can't because they have 2. So what I do, queen e7. Also in opposite side castling, right? We've kind of both want to attack each other. Now that move is just a clean pawn blunder. That is knight takes pawn, it's a one mover. So you have to notice this stuff because if we don't notice that, and instead we continue with our plan, there's superseding concepts in chess. If we just continue with our plan, here comes this, it's chaos. We're gonna get attacked. So free stuff is good, you should take free stuff. Your plan does not matter unless it's like a checkmate, right? Free stuff. Okay, now we go back to our plan, right? Now they've defended this, so e5. Going back to our plan of moving a pawn in the center of the board. My opponent's playing super fast, I can't really change that, right? So pawn takes. Now we have a choice. We can take with either knight. It's too difficult to decide which one, so I'm just going to take with this one. It's far too difficult. Now we've opened up the position a little bit, so we made a pawn trade to open things up. Now we don't have many more pawn trades. We know we don't really want to push pawns in front of our king. We can push pawns on the other side of the board because there's a king over there. Rook h4. Wow, what the heck? So, can I take that? No. Can I take that and then take that? Oh, yes. Oh my God, I'm so smart, right? I'm so clever. Oh, it got replaced by a knight. That's what happens sometimes. You think you're very clever. So, that was not the best move, right? However, what if you remove the defender of the rook? Isn't that really clever? That's really smart. If they take, you take. Certainly must be good, right? That's the plan. I hope they take my knight. Okay, well, it's not that they missed it. Instead, they actually defended their rook, which is very clever as well. And now, if they had taken my knight and I took the rook, they could have actually taken my bishop. It's very careful. It's called a capture chain or a capture sequence. The best thing for me to do there might have been actually to take back the knight. So now we have a situation where I can take the knight or the bishop. More often than not, the best thing to do is to actually take a bishop for a knight. This is like 7.5 times out of 10. The bishop is preferred. It's a long-range piece. That's attacking that. So I can defend it with my pawn, for example, with my bishop. I'm going to defend it with my pawn. And I'm not really any close to getting mated, but g4, g5 is kind of scary. That's a very advanced plan. If my opponent plays it, I'll be very, very impressed. Because again, queen here is mate if I don't have this pawn, which is one of the main dangers of going opposite side castling. It's a scary position. It's not an easy game at all. And how do you get rid of this? Well, you can take it. That's one way. You can go boom, boom, rook h6. But that's a full rook. You're giving up a full rook. You really have to have mate if you give up a full rook. And remember interposing? How do I interpose this? With my pawn. That's a very useful defense. Knight to e5. So that's free. That's a freebie. So my opponent thought for a little bit, and that's just queen takes. That's just queen into knight. And unfortunately, that happens at this level. But both of these players played... This was like one of the best games by 400 I've ever seen, to be honest. They're 600 rapid, right? But, okay, so now, how do you win a game where you're up a knight? Don't hang a queen. How do you win a game where you're up a knight? Let's go for a queen trade. Without queens on the board, the chance of us getting mated is significantly lower. My opponent should not trade queens. They should play like queen d4, queen d2. They really should not trade queens when they are down material, because you... Right, that's just a good rule of thumb. And this is still far from over at the 400 level. Definitely far from over, but now you have rooks, so you have to use them. What you do in a position like this is you double your rooks, similar to this, but this pawn is a lot softer than my pawn over here because I'm protected by a pawn. They are not. Also, don't hang your bishop. We can move the bishop or protect it, as we've seen. I am going to, if you protect it and attack it, you stop guarding that pawn. You notice that? That's called continuity. You want to make a move, but suddenly you forget that a move that was impossible becomes possible. So be very careful anytime you move something. You might have been defending something else, right? So that's, right. Just move out of the way, and now we're going to double up, and we're going to go for this pawn. And we might not even win it, to be honest with you. If they protect it, it might still be a while before, right? We actually break through. Okay, well, we don't... That's not good. That is a misunderstanding of the position. You should not be trading rooks. Now we've gotten a queen and a rook off the board. So you might be thinking, well, if I trade these pieces, I get into an endgame, I won't lose. Actually, it's not that you won't lose. Well, you will probably. But it's more a matter of, you can't really win. Rook and 6 are not going to beat a rook, bishop, and 7. I just got too much stuff. You're not going to beat me. That's a freebie. So 3 or 4 things given away in this game, right? That's a counting. That's a counting exercise. I have a feeling my opponent will trade rooks. Yeah, you see, I've kind of noticed the pattern. Now we're gonna pick things up, and now you don't need to take the pawns. Now you need a queen. What you need to do here is you need to make a queen. Now, to be honest with you, the easiest way to win a game of chess as a 400 is to make a second queen. Of course, they might resign. You shouldn't. You should give away your pawns and try to get stalemated. That's what you should do. Because with pawns on the board, you will not get stalemated, and you shouldn't resign. Opponent might resign against me, but you don't even need to take these pawns. I wouldn't play it like that. I would try to promote another pawn. If you are met with resistance of some sort, then you can fight the resistance, or you can go and win those pawns and push on the other side of the board. So the easiest thing to do is to do like this, and make sure you're not stalemating. Always make sure that the king has a legal move. Always has a legal move, right? And push. And push. And push. It doesn't matter if you lose the bishop. Don't be worried about losing the bishop. In many cases, you actually want to. Because what some people will do is they'll move the bishop and forget it controls certain squares. Lose the bishop. As long as the king has a legal move, make 2 queens. That's the easiest way to win a game of chess, if you can. Okay, still legal moves, 2 queens. And now, for example, queen here is stalemate. No more legal moves of the king. What I would like to do here is bring the bishop to a centralized position so it's kind of out of the way, and it lets your queens operate. That's very useful. You might up close accidentally stalemate. And 2 queens like this, you can give a million checks. You absolutely can. But the easiest thing to do, cut the king off as close to the edge as possible without stalemating. Bring one of the queens without checking and play a move like this. And now the king is completely cut off on G and H, and the other queen goes to like this. That is the easiest way. We get all the pieces out of the way. Quick ladder mate to seal the deal. Okay? Quick ladder mate, the easiest solution at the beginner level. This was a quite decent game. This was opponent, you know, I made some inaccuracies in the opening, and here is where, you got to pay attention. Don't open up the position against your own king. That is one of the easiest ways to lose. If anything, play queen e7, keep the tension of the pieces. Now, had the opponent played like this is actually quite different. There, I don't hate that you traded, but you want to make sure that if you're trading, you're not just opening up a rook directly at the place that you've already castled. And if you do that, okay, at least anticipate it and see it and protect against it. There was a lot of kind of understanding of that. Here there was piece dynamics, right? Understanding, can we take this? Can we remove this? Oh, and then I'm so clever. Not really. I'm not that clever. Capture chain, right? Okay, he takes me, I take him. Game over. Wait, but then what about this? So we want to make sure we take the next step. We don't just stop at, oh, I take the rook. Boom, done. What's the opponent going to do? They're just going to sit there and let you take them? Right? Not necessarily. So, and then pawn breaks. It's so important. So important in a closed position. Closed position means more pawns on the board. So 7 pawns, 8 pawns. In a closed position, you want to make those pawn breaks to open up the position, right? So that's, but also free stuff. Free stuff was given away a few times during this game, and that happens. That's going to happen. We're going to take as much free stuff as possible. The next person is not online, so we're going to play CJ. So this person is rated 500. Last time I played with the king's pawn. Let's see what happens if we play with the queen's pawn. Yeah, unfortunately, some people register and then they don't continue the game. They don't stay online. So 2 pawns in the center if possible. In this case, possible, right? Now one of our pawns is under attack. The best way to protect this pawn is with a knight. So we don't want to go here. That just takes away from our own knight. So if you can protect one of your center pawns with a knight, it's generally the rule of thumb. Okay, now we want to go 2 knights, yeah? Something like knight to f3. Generally good. We're not attacking the knight just yet because that would be overextending. We don't want to do this a little. I mean, we can. It's not like terrible, but it's not. You're not building the right approach. You want to, for as long as you can, just develop. Just get your pieces out into the open, right? Like castles or something. Bishop castles. Last game we had opposite side castling, so we had situation where we were just on opposite sides, and oftentimes in this case you can do opposite side castling, something like bishop out, queen out, bring the king over here. So this move is not bad. They are pinning our knight. If a piece ever gets this far into your territory, because this obviously is your territory, you are allowed to ask a question. Like, what are you doing here? Right? Okay, they're taking. All right, they could have hung around. Maybe we would have tried to trap them. Now, obviously, you're going to take with the queen and not the pawn. The pawn opens up the king. That's not good. But I'm going to do it. Because I'm 500. I don't know better. I don't want to bring my queen out. That's too scary. So the problem is I have an open king and I have a very weak pawn on h3, right? So here comes knight back to d7. Okay, okay, let's finish my development. So I've put all my pieces out, like Gotham told me to. But now what? Now what do I do? Well, we both have 8 pawns. Gotham said the position is closed. Yeah, but you have a lot more space. We're not both jostling in the middle. Can I bring a rook? Can I bring a queen? Yeah, you can make these very subtle improving moves. At some point, you're going to have to go forward. The tough thing about a position like this is, like, for instance, look, let's say I play bishop d5 attacking this. Right? The problem with a position that's so closed is that it's just you're just going to get kicked out. Like, it's very spiky. Oh, my opponent misses my idea. So they counterattack me in the center, but they missed that my idea was to play bishop takes pawn. So now I'm going to win a rook. I've trapped their rook in the corner. But at what loss? I'm going to lose a bishop, right? So bishop takes pawn, pawn takes bishop, and I'm going to win the rook in the corner. So the idea there was I just made a one-move threat. It wasn't that good, but it was the only thing that was not guarded at all in the black position, which was that pawn, and I attacked it, and it wasn't good. I would have had to move on with my life, you know, if that happened, right? But I take the rook. Now, what you do if a bishop wanders this close, shut the door. Don't let the bishop out. Keep the bishop locked in your corner so maybe you can win it. Pawn, queen, and everybody, right? There is this check on my king, but checks don't decide games. I just slide over to the corner. That's another very important skill. How can they attack my king? See, I'm not just drawing arrows for myself. I'm constantly drawing arrows at what do my opponent's pieces see? And that's so important. What do my opponent's pieces see? And right now, they see a lot of open lines, right? Moves like queen to h4, right? But you gotta trap my bishop here. This is the most important thing. Don't let the bishop out. Respond to this move and make sure the bishop stays in jail. And then if I'm clever, I'll try to trade and kind of rescue the bishop, give it a helping hand out of this diagonal. I'm 500 though, I don't know that. I'm like, oh, all right, it's dead, whatever, you know? And then I'm not gonna save the bishop, like whatever. It's a goner. Okay. Does this move do anything? This is so tough. I'm moving on to, all right, I'm gonna go attack the knight. Queen was attacking the bishop. I got a little lucky. I got lucky. I missed that the queen was attacking the bishop. I could have ran away. I could have gone all the way back with my bishop, all the way back into my territory, but I forgot. I didn't see it. Got a little bit lucky, but I saw that I could play a one mover attacking that knight. Okay. But you have to anticipate that it's not just the knight. Anytime a piece moves, other pieces start seeing things in a different way. For example, my queen used to guard this pawn. That's a free pawn now because my queen used to guard it. So that's how the board changes. From over here, the queen sees the middle. Luckily, my middle is quite well protected, admittedly. But bishop takes pawn is a free pawn now. It's a very open, the board is opening up, right? Now the board is, you're seeing this, like, board is opening up a lot. Excellent. Fair trade. I'm up material, so I'm fine with the trade. I can attack the bishop. Don't hate it. I can move the knight, which attacks the bishop and that. I kind of like that. If I move the knight, they can take me on b2, but I can take... And that's a fork. Oh, that must be good, right? Knight b5 must be good. The bishop can go back and protect that, actually. And then I have to move on to my next plan. Now, bishop back to b6 is, yeah, wow. Awesome move by my opponent. Now I can't really break through over there. This is... When you don't know what to do, what do you do? Right? Like, what do you do? I'm going to play a rook move. I don't know. I haven't moved my rook yet. I'm just going to bring my rook to the kind of open file. Now, at this point, there's an extremely strong move here by my opponent. And that move is the move knight to e5. Attacking the pawn, which is near my king. That is a very, very decent move. It's very hard to defend, by the way, that pawn. Okay, they go that way. And they're attacking my queen. Not a bad move. I have to now move my queen to safety. This one's not so hard. This is the only move I have. I mean, that's a very easy way to lose your queen. But, we're not going to do that. So, I'm going to get our queen to safety. Queen c6 is not a bad move. Queen c6 actually might be a very instructive moment. Okay, rook d8. Can't really take much. Can play a one mover, attacking the knight. It doesn't seem like a terrible move, especially at this level. Just pawn up to b4. I mean, the knight's going to move out of the way. And then we got to keep thinking. It's not an easy position at all, really. It's not. Like, how do we, you know, like a couple games ago, we were trying to attack weak spots near my opponent's king. But how do you attack a position where everything is protected? It's not easy. We have to not weaken our position, right? We have to not blunder anything. We have to make moves that don't, like, for instance, just kind of an offhand move like queen c3. Just bringing the queen more toward the center, not blundering anything. Our knight is a little offside, right? Like maybe rook up. Our knight's a little bit offside. So if it gets attacked, okay, 5. We can take. Most people at low elo just take. Like, if they can take, they just take, right? So now, if bishop takes, our queen's under attack, and it's protected. So we have to move to safety. We can be safe, or we can transfer the queen very deep into our opponent's territory. This is kind of a good strategy, like just kind of hanging out near all the enemy pieces, as long as you're not going to get taken, as long as you can't really be attacked or messed with. It's a good strategy. People kind of freak out sometimes if you just put the queen near stuff. You know, for example, if my opponent had put their queen on h4 early and hung out near my territory, I might have gotten a little bit freaked. I might have not. I probably would have been quite calm, actually. But in this case, you know, my opponent doing a good job sort of chilling out. I did a good job chilling out. They did a good job chilling out. D5. Okay. Takes. 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 Are we up material? Gotham taught me I should trade when I'm up material, right? Yes and no. In this case, this exchange is not bad, but it does do something called activating our opponent's piece, right? We're bringing the queen to everything, the crossroads of the entire position. And this game is a good example of the fact that even though we are up a rook for a bishop, which we won early on, right, when I trapped my opponent's rook, if a rook is not participating in the game, how are you going to say this rook is worth 5 points, right? Now, when the queen arrives here, what is it attacking? It's attacking the knight, it's attacking the pawn, it's attacking this pawn. That's kind of scary, right? So we can move the knight. We can also defend the knight. So I'm going to kill 2 birds, 1 stone here. But does my opponent see this? This is actually a very good position for black. Black's king is a lot safer than mine. And in chess, despite material probably being the most important thing, the second most important thing is king safety. And right now, I gotta tell you, my king is not feeling safe. And if I try to bring my rook to the party, it's just gonna get taken. It's gonna get swarmed like, you know, like I've got vultures outside of my house. I can't bring this queen to the back rank because it's gonna get taken. And I have to guard my king. It's a really tough position. It's not an easy position to play at all, like at all. So I can probably protect this, right? The pawn over here. I can also, you know, maybe bring this knight back, right? And that's hitting the queen and the knight. Maybe trade. But this is a fantastic game that my opponent is playing here. I've kind of played to their level. For example, here queen takes pawn, and I'm sort of scared. I mean, this goes all the way back to why you shouldn't have taken like this. Do you remember this? Why we shouldn't have taken with a pawn? Because this is what happens. The game begins proceeding, and all the pawns near our king are collapsing. This is really dangerous for us. Well, for example, queen here, pawn here, it's mate. I'm already getting mated, so I've got to be super, super careful. Not easy at all. G5, okay. Can we check? Yes. We can also fork, but the first thing you always need to look at is checks in any position. In any position, that check is good, and we can now immediately win this pawn. And actually, the craziest thing about this, look at this. Look at how big the board is. The bishop is hanging. I'm not sure if 500 catches that. I'm not. I'm really not. I'm actually not going to take this, because I just... That is so beyond the pay grade. But you know what's not beyond the pay grade? The king is a little trapped. And even though my rook still can't come to the party on those files, it can on b1. And rook b8 is borderline checkmate. Like, if it doesn't get stopped, it's mate. It can be stopped. That's why I'm calling it borderline. Rook b8 is mate. I am threatening mate because the king is cut off. It cannot escape, right? Bishop b6, wow. And you know what the craziest thing about that move is? There is now a threat to my own king, which is so hard to see. Part of me wants to play a5. If my opponent sees that they can win the game after a5, I will be so happy. I'm gonna do it. Because this is the point of the series. Does my opponent see bishop takes f2? Let's see. and then king h2, and then bishop g3. And that will show you exactly why you don't open up your king. a5 is a tunnel vision move. It's a move like, oh my god, if the bishop moves, rook b8. And then my opponent can say forever that they beat Gotham Chess rated 2700. I'm not sure they're going to have that. It's completely winning. Bishop takes is just game over. They are probably scared of mate, which is why, and there also might be like, is Gotham actually blundering against me? Is bishop f2 actually, they're so... Oh, no, they missed it. Now I take the bishop. Okay, now, even though rook b6 is still not so terrible, there might be a draw. Like, it's actually kind of crazy. Oh, no, it's not a draw. The only thing you need to worry about when you've got a weak king like this is perpetual check. Okay, unfortunately, my opponent did not go for checks. And we can trade queens here. One of the ways to win this is to trade the queen. But again, this was our plan for a very long time, so I'm just going to play rook b8. And now we can take the queen for the rook, but we also can give a check and remove the defender first. That's a little bit too much. Something like check and then taking. That's not going to, so I'm going to do this. And we're going to follow our strategy of the last game. Oh, okay, they resigned. But the strategy of the last game, which was just making a second queen, removing the pawns. I'm going to tell my opponent. I'm going to tell them that they were winning. I'm going to tell them, yes, that's the point of the series. Okay. It's like chess.com. You like play those games and then it tells you immediately that you were you had an opportunity to be winning. It's like very... No, but I mean that's the point, that's why I'm doing this series. It's very unique. I haven't lost games to my viewers before. I'm playing another 500, by the way. So I'm going to actually be white one more time. I played d4 last game. I guess I'll play d4 one more time. You can play e4, d4. It doesn't really matter as long as you're playing a center pawn. Okay, so now I can't play my center pawn, right? So I'm going to play knight f3. Yeah, queen's pawn positions, like I said, the best friend of the queen's pawn is the c pawn. So, playing like the queen's gambit is what this is called officially. In this game, I'm going to kind of begin showing you how the d and c pawn go together. Yeah, if they take, this pawn really can't be saved. So, for instance, again, you can't put your other pawn to the middle yet, but it needs some support. So you go like this. And this pawn on c4, the queen's gambit style positions, the pawn can't really be guarded unless black like defends to the death. So you bring two pawns to the middle and then you take, which is one of the reasons the queen's gambit, d and c pawns go together so well. It's because you're going to move your pawn to the center and have two center pawns, right? So I'm going to play something like e4. Now the best move there, by the way, all right, the best move is d5. Anytime your opponent leaves knights in the middle, which can be attacked without getting taken. The difference of the last game, I don't know if you remember, you said last game, you said, Levy, you told me in the beginning of the last game not to extend because you can be taken. That is the difference. If you have free passage into your opponent's territory, whoa, what are we doing here? Why are we blundering? This is just a free knight. No. If you have free passage into your opponent's territory without pawn trades, do it. Pawns are so lethal. They take so much space away, right? All right, so bishop to f5. Attacks our knight. We can defend it or we can move it. For example, queen c2 defense, but also that's called pinning yourself. Like, why would we just move our queen where the bishop and the knight like that? So you can just move, for example, back to where you were. Right? Simple. Poor subscriber. CJ's devastated. He's like, I can't believe I missed that. No, I mean, look, this is the point. This is why we're doing this. It's for y'all to see that. Right? These things are possible. To believe in yourself. Knight back to c3. Now here there's an opportunity for my opponent to come in here with a knight. Right, like this. and get after me. E5. Maybe D5, maybe pawn takes. I have counted that we win this trade, so we're gonna take the pawn. If queen takes, right? If queen takes like this, we can take with the knight or the king. So if you take with the king, obviously you don't have any right to castle anymore. It's not the worst thing in the world considering we're up a knight. So, you know, if you're up a knight but you can't castle, it's not terrible. But in this case, all right. In this case, it's bishop takes pawn, maybe. Let's do it. Just a free pawn. The rook sees the knight, now that my opponent castles long. And, now we are up a piece, but we still need to get our king to safety. Bishop back to e6. I'm up material, so we're going to trade. And then we are going to castle. The rook still sees the knight. Right? Rook still sees the knight. And we are also up. No, we're not up a pawn. Pawns are equal. We were down a pawn, but then bishop to c5. Okay. So let me go bishop to e3. This is a perfectly reasonable move here. So is bishop to f4. So is bishop to g5 attacking the rook. The only reason I'm doing this is because, again, we are up material. So a bishop trade is completely fine. Then if we trade the rooks and the knight, we're going to have a knight. They're not going to have a knight. So our knight's going to hop around. It's going to be kind of simple. If you want to, you are more than welcome to play bishop g5. You have like probably 10 or 15 moves here that don't lose anything. So one pawn push somewhere is also okay. Taking with the knight here is better than taking with the pawn. Because if you take with the pawn, that's called doubling your pawns and you're isolating them. There's no real need to do that. Your pawns are much better kind of hanging out all together. And my next move is rook d1. So another good move here is knight g5 to threaten this pawn and also threaten this fork, arriving on f7. That's also a good move. You can also play rook to c1, rook to e1. You can push any of these pawns one square and move the king over, right? The position doesn't change. You're still winning. You're winning because you're up a knight. Your king's safe, you're up a knight. And, okay, you see? It's a perfect example of a move that doesn't do a whole lot. If anything, it stops my knight. So at this point, I don't really care which rook you move. Let's move this one. And I would like to trade rooks because the less pieces my opponent has on the board, as we learned, the less resistance they're going to have. My opponent should not trade. They should move the rook. That's what they should do. Okay. Let's go rook takes rook. I'm actually thinking I'm going to cut this first episode short because it's already quite long and I appreciate your patience very much. But I will be playing all the same players that I promised to play in the long version of this episode in the second episode. So the episode will not be out for the first like day or two, but it will be posted. I will play against the higher rated players, like 600 plus in episode 2 of Steps. I feel like 40 minutes is good. I feel like if you're still watching, I appreciate you very much, but you know, I want 40 minutes. So 50 minutes is quite good. So knight d4, idea, trade knights, but a bad move. Continuity, I've talked about continuity before. Continuity is, in this case, the knight used to guard the pawn. So the knight guarded the pawn, and it doesn't once I move it here. But, okay, rook takes, and yeah, it's going to be very difficult for my opponent to get any sort of counterplay. Now, useful advice. You see how my back rank has nothing on it? If an enemy rook were to make it down here, it would be mate somehow. So just a useful move. If you're not under attack, give your king breathing room. I cannot tell you how much rating this will save you so you never blunder back rank checkmate. Now your king is safe. Now what you need to do is get into the opponent's barn, right? So get in as far as you can. If that was there, we wouldn't have been able to do that. and start eating. Start eating the pawns, right? Because you have a rook and a knight. They only have a rook. At the end of the day, you have more attack than they can offer you any sort of defensive resistance. Now, if the opponent is smart, what they will do, or clever, smart is too strong of a word. Good. That's also very good. Good defense. Excellent defense. I would love to get my knight into the game, but I can't. So sometimes to go forward, go back. The point is to go here. And like I said, we have more attacking possibilities than they have defenders. You can take this, you can ignore it because it's a fair trade. Taking is completely fine. You don't have to, but... And now knight d4. Take a step back to go forward, right? Now e6, this pawn that we're trying to win. Notice, by the way, how I haven't just given a completely absent-minded check. You might have been asking why I didn't do it. There's no... You can and you can't. Like, it's completely fine if you do. It's just not... You don't need to. You absolutely don't need to. In some cases, it forces the king to the outside of the board, but it doesn't change anything, right? We're going to try to win this pawn. I am going to offer a trade of rooks as well, because we'll be winning if the knight and the pawns take. But so we're going to play rook takes pawn. Okay, now the rook moved, so maybe we take with the rook or something. Right? And now, what do you know about winning these positions? You know that we're going to promote. Oh, this is a fantastic move. Oh my god. I'm going to give this move the credit it deserves. Right? Pawn takes. We forgot about rook takes knight. That's going to happen. That is going to happen in your games. Now you go, oh my god, I hung my knight. Oh my god. So, this was an extremely clever idea. A sneak attack on our hanging knight. And this is a perfect example of doors open and doors close when pieces move. That is super. What I should have done here, guard my knight. Move my knight, right? So now we have rook and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Rook and 5 versus rook and 3. But we have pawns. So we need to somehow move our pawns forward. We can move the rook up and push. But in endgames, the best way is to bring the rook behind the pawn and advance it forward. It's like a just defense, like behind it forever. Rook in front of the pawn is messy because you can't move, right? So this is a great move. Oh my god, this is a fantastic move. Rook d2 to hunt me, just like I was hunting my opponent. But I'm gonna push. The only thing is my opponent can attack my pawn from the opposite side. So if they go behind my pawn, it's gonna be very annoying for me to move. I can't really move, right? Can't move my rook, can't move my pawn. But I have this pawn. So I still have another pawn. Now, I can also probably ask the rook where it's going to move. And hopefully he doesn't... See, if my opponent goes eating my pawn just promotes. They don't want to take my pawns. I have too far of an advanced pawn. They need to stay. Great, that's excellent. Now, at this point, I'm like, if I give a check, the king just runs. So what if I push my pawn? And then if they take me, I push this pawn. So I've got 2 pawns, right? I have a feeling my opponent's going to try to bring their king. And that will be a fatal error. Because there's a major difference between getting checked on that square and that square. Okay, c5. King c8 led to checkmate. This would have been checkmate, which is kind of crazy. It's a totally different thing because the king is boxed in, right? So now, g5. I'm using my pawn as a decoy. Go take me. Go ahead. I'm going to keep pushing. Now, this is very important. I can promote my queen. When you have a situation like this, you don't need to guard your pawn. You can actually check the king. You can use the check to defend the back rank. And if the king is far enough, like this, you will queen. And it's okay that you're going to lose it, because you're going to get a rook for it. Now, if the king was able to get closer, we would not have been able to do that. Now, obviously, the game is very similar philosophy as we've shown. Make a queen. Anticipate that you're not accidentally giving up something here, right? So when okay, we'll just make a queen. And now, I'm going to teach you probably the easiest thing just for peace of mind is to take this, but you don't need to stop the queen. What do we know about queens and rooks? Don't go hunting with checks. Cut the king off. Queen? Right? Where's the king? The king is 2 rows, right? So cut the king off like this. Make sure the king is completely cut off. Give a check, and that's it. Ladder mate, even though a move away from promotion. And rook 2e8, and that's checkmate. This game, I began showing you that D and C pawns go together very much. And if you cannot put D and E in the center together, the queen's gambit intends to do that. It intends to put D and E together and win back the C pawn. The dangers of trying to defend this pawn early can lead to some really funny blunders. Like, for example, there's a blunder like here in the queen's gambit accepted, where if the opponent is not careful, it's a very famous mistake. You can play moves like A4, just splitting like this. And this is terrible. It's like Battleship. You pick up everything. But there is another famous blunder where the diagonal is open and the rook just cannot be protected at all, right? So the queen's gambit is a fantastic opening just because it kind of makes sense. Like in this game, we saw an example of it purely making the most sense, where white gets the whole center, D and E, with no questions asked. And yes, black with better play can put up a little bit of resistance, begin pinning us. I also mentioned how attacking a knight in the center of the board like this to just force it God knows where, like to A5 or here or something, or losing it, right? If you can attack knights like this with well-coordinated defenses behind the pawns and you're not overextending, you're not getting in a pawn trade, that's good, but this is also very good. DE in the middle, oh, it's fantastic. It more space, leads your pieces to better degree of activity. Opponent did blunder, and we cleaned it up, but for now, folks, I did mention that we were going to go to 800, but it's going to be 800 up in episode 2 because this one's already quite long. Let me know your feedback in the comments, and I'm going to launch episode 2 basically immediately afterward. So let me know if 5-5 is good. I felt like the time control today was very reasonable, and let me know any feedback. Welcome to the series.